afternoon and welcome back to Football League World TV. We've got a debate show coming up for you this afternoon where we're going to be looking at Middlesbrough, who've had quite an underwhelming start to the 2022-23 campaign. So an interesting show coming up in the next half an hour. I'm your host, Alfie Burns, and I'm delighted to be joined by my two colleagues, Mulley and Ben Wignall. Billy, how are you this afternoon?
Yeah, doing well, thank you. I was thinking before this show, I'm usually quite optimistic about other teams bar my own, so it's going to follow that kind of theme again today, despite there being some arguments for both sides of the fence, I guess.
Good stuff. I'm sure the Borough fans will be delighted for your positivity this afternoon. Billy, Ben, how are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. Running on a severe lack of sleep and on the way to the Midlands later to watch Preston North End against Wolves, but interesting to talk about a team who probably everyone would thought would be at the top end of the table right now rather than the bottom end. A very curious case to discuss in Middlesbrough.
Yeah, absolutely. We're streaming across Facebook, YouTube and Twitter this afternoon, so any Borough fans joining us want to get themselves in the comments and join in the debate, please do. It'd be great to hear from you, and just any general EFL fans, if you want to get your thoughts in on Chris Wilder's side, we'll look to get them up on the show. I've got to admit, I was one of those that was quite optimistic about Middlesbrough coming into the season. So 5 games in, I'm slightly surprised to be saying that they are sitting 23rd in the Championship table at this moment in time. And there's probably a chance that it's only Coventry's lack of fixtures so far that's keeping Chris Wilder's side off the foot of the Championship table. I'll sort of pose this question to both of you. I'll start with you, Billy, but have you been surprised by Borough's struggle so far?
Yeah, looking at the points tally, I'm definitely surprised. Would have imagined within the first 5 games they would have picked up at least 3 points in a particular game. You wouldn't really look at Middlesbrough and think that they are one of 2 teams in the Championship that are yet to pick up a victory. So in that perspective, I am surprised. But the performances haven't been that bad, bar Reading. They put in a really, really good display against Stoke and sort of that looked to be somewhat of a turning point. But the Reading performance didn't really back that up at all. So, yeah, I think there are certainly positives to take in terms of performance. I think they're still looking to add as well, which coming into sort of the back end of August, if you're still needing to do recruitment work, that's going to result in, I think, a staggered start, the kind of start that we've seen so far, at least from a points tally perspective. But they are adding quality into the squads. We've seen another rumour today that if they can get over the line, will be a real good addition in Matt Clark. So there are reasons to be positive in my eyes, but the points tally at the moment doesn't really back that up.
No, we'll come on to the transfers a little bit later in the show. But Ben, sort of looking at Middlesbrough's squad at the minute, the games that they've played, maybe even how they've played in some games, are you surprised to see them where they are in the table?
Yeah, very surprised. I think on paper some of the matches could be considered, tough. West Brom at home with their new attacking signings in Wallace and John Swift could have been, classed as tough. In Sheffield United at home as well was always going to be a tough one. But I think, when you see them play the likes of QPR, who, aren't the most free scoring, but they got beat 3-2, and Reading as well away, you wouldn't have expected them to come away with nothing against them. They're the kind of fixtures where you'd expect them to get points with the squad they've got, but something's not particularly clicked right now, and I think we know the squad's not the finished article by any means. Wilder has been made no secret he does want 3 or 4 more new players, so I think it is surprising, but we know that this starting 11 and the squad that Wilder has right now is not the one that will end the transfer window, so I think we can't read too much into it yet, but it's still a slightly concerning. I'm sure Borough fans will be concerned as well.
It's been 3 draws from the opening 5 fixtures, and some of them have been really credible draws, I think, as you sort of touched on there, Ben. Drawing with West Brom and also drawing with current league leaders Sheffield United. They're not really points that can be sniffed at, but there has been 2 defeats, and Billy sort of touched on what will be in a disappointing result and performance against Reading on the weekend gone by. But looking at the fact that it has been 3 draws in the opening 5. Billy, do you kind of feel like we're not too far away from seeing things really click into gear for for Middlesbrough? Sorry.
Yeah, I think at the moment, as I said before, there have been a lot of positive signs from the football they've played. I mentioned that Stoke game. I heard that Stoke booed their team after a draw against Middlesbrough, which I guess indicates the kind of performance that they did put in. But yeah, it's finding that consistency factor. And when you've got lots of new players coming in, it's quite hard to gain that consistency factor. But as we say, that the window's coming to an end. We're still very, very early into the season. You see Rodrigo Muniz, you see Matthew Hopp coming in as well. 2 players that once are fully integrated into the system and equipped with Wilder's ideas. I'm sure that the forward department will start to fire just like they did last season with the loan signings that they made. So I'm not concerned at all, I don't think. I don't look at Middlesbrough and think this is going to be a reflection of what is to come. I think it's more them finding their stride at the moment and suffering perhaps from having a later transfer window than the majority of other clubs. We've seen a lot of Championship teams maybe not finalise their business, but get to sort of the 80-90% mark quite early on this summer. And I think that's resulted in those kind of teams picking up points nearer the start of the campaign. But as we say, I think once Middlesbrough start firing, I think that's the critical element here. Once they start going, it's going to be hard to stop. Once they gain momentum, like we saw last year, they become a very, very difficult outfit to stop.
Had a few comments in. Once the transfer's done, expecting Middlesbrough to be competing. Alan Green as well. He'd be concerned if it was like this after 10 games, not 5 as we currently are at the moment. Let's move on to transfers then. Middlesbrough are still very, very active, even though the season is 5 games. Old now Alex Mowatt and Rodrigo Muniz have both been added since the season's started. It's not going to have helped to the start, is it, Ben? Still being so active as Billy touched on.
Yeah, I think if you've not got your squad sorted, before the start of the season, then it's always going to be difficult. I think most Championship clubs are in that boat. Obviously, some deal with it differently. I think Cardiff made about 30 or 14 different signings, and they've had mixed results. And I think what we've seen from the first few weeks of the Championship was a lot of up and down games. Teams are going to places where you expect them to get results and not getting them, like Borough did at Reading, and I think Reading did the same to Blackburn, who were flying high with 3 wins and they ended up battering them. So I think a lot of these clubs are still not the finished article in terms of what they're doing in the transfer market, and these players coming in August need time to settle in. Mowatt and Muniz have come in during the last week and a half, and when they're settling, they should bring something different to what Borough have been offering already. But I think it's clear that the depth's not quite there right now. I think Caelan Boyd-Munce was on the bench at the weekend, and I don't think he'll be in and around really the starting 11 for most of the season. So I think that's a sign that Borough's depth's not where it should be right now, and I think that will get resolved in the next 9 days when the transfer window closes. But I think, yeah, like you said, I don't think it could be helped with the business that Borough have done and how late it's been, because they had to wait for the money for Jed Spence and Marcus Tavernier to come in to start splashing the cash. And I think we'll see in the coming weeks that they will start to potentially flourish and put results together.
I mean, it's not just depth off the bench that they're looking to sign. Wilder's made a real point of pointing towards his squad numbers that he's given out for this coming season. And at the moment, there's still the number 5 available. Now, Matt Clark might pick that up. There's the number 7 available, the number 10 available, and the number 11 available. That suggests, Billy, that, and Wilder has suggested, that he's looking not just for squad players, but starters to go into his Middlesbrough side.
Yeah, he's remained quite consistent with the fact that he wants to add 3 or 4 more players in sort of the latter stages of this window. It's interesting the fact that they've left 5, 7, 10 and 11 typically big players within any kind of squad. So yeah, it's going to be interested to see how that develops. You'd think if Matt Clark comes in, he'd be a good candidate for the number 5 shirt. And yeah, I guess it's a signal of intent, really, what they still want to do. And I guess it's another indication that, they are still looking to add. So things may not be resolved straight away in terms of results, but performances are going to start hitting the level that we know we can with Middlesbrough. I think most of us Football League World had Middlesbrough to do very well this season, and I don't think this start, the results that we've had so far, is going to really hinder that. We'll go on to it in a minute, but we've seen teams in this division and other divisions start off very slowly and build into the Championship season. It's, again, I mentioned it a little bit before, it's about this momentum factor. Once every player is equipped with Wilder's ideas, then I'm sure they're going to be the kind of club that are very hard to stop. But this momentum factor, I think, is absolutely critical.
I've had another comment in from Alan saying we look like we need a good number 10. I was kind of having this thought when we were putting the show together earlier that one of Wilder's main assets at Sheffield United, where he had so much success, was a player like David McGoldrick that sort of came off the front to link play. Ben, do you feel like a player of McGoldrick's ilk, obviously not David McGoldrick, but a player like that would be something that would help Middlesbrough this season?
Potentially, yeah, but I don't think that. I think they're going to get like a McGoldrick type. He kind of played off Billy Sharp, didn't he, when he was at Sheffield United, and the strikers at Borough are getting, a lot of them seem to be kind of penalty box players. Marcus Force's best inside the box. Rodrigo Muniz, from the little I've seen of him, he seems to be a kind of a penalty box player. And Strand Lawson or Emil Rees, whichever one that Wilder decides to go for, they're kind of instinctive around the 18-yard box, got a bit of power behind them, but they're not exactly the drop deep kind of striker, and link up player brings the midfielders and wing backs into it. So that could be the player they kind of need, but it doesn't look like that's what Wilder wants. And maybe when the transfer window shuts, if there's any free agents on the market, if that's what he decides he needs, then he could look at it that way. But I don't think that's the way that Wilder's going to go for. I think he'll look at playing 2 attacking number 8s, maybe. Tavernier and Matt Crooks were the 2 players who played in those roles last season. And perhaps Crooks could be that McGoldrick player if Wilder decides to kind of shift him up top if they continue to struggle. But yeah, I think the strikers he's looking for at the minute, they look to be more penalty box players rather than the kind of drop off and link up player. But I think the midfielder of Marcus Tavernier's ilk's probably a bit more important than getting a hold-up striker in.
It's still so early in the season, and I don't think anybody will be writing Middlesbrough off when it comes to what they can achieve this season. A lot of us predicted promotion, and I don't think the view of too many will have changed despite this slow start, particularly with Nottingham Forest's last season in mind. They were I think they were rock bottom after 7 fixtures last season, and they went on to win promotion via the playoffs. They could have got automatic promotion given the run that they went on under Steve Cooper. Don't want to draw too many similarities between Middlesbrough and Forest, obviously, because there was the change in management at the City Ground. But Billy, they're sort of an example to Middlesbrough here, that just because you've had a slow start to the season, it doesn't mean that your sort of pre-season ambitions are completely dead.
Yeah, exactly that. And you look at the Championship this season as well, you look that no team has really grabbed the bull by its horns. You see the top team at the moment, Sheffield United, 10 points from 5 games. It seems a division so far in these early stages where anybody realistically can go anywhere and pick up 3 points. I think, of course, that's going to change as the season progresses, as teams find their strides, which, again, I think Middlesbrough are going to be that kind of club that do find their stride as more players get welcomed into the system and as they finalise their summer business. As Alan said in the comments, 10 games is probably a good assessment of where the club currently is. Difficult after 5 games because it's still the transfer window going on around us, and we've spoken about the fact there that Wilder has been on the search for 3 or 4 more players. So once you're 2 weeks into September, players are getting embedded into the system. I think that's going to be a fair reflection of what we can expect from Middlesbrough. Of course, we've seen it last year with Nottingham Forest, 1 point from 7. You mentioned a change of management there, but the players were very much similar. It is this sort of momentum factor that can take you a long way in this division. We've seen it as well with Sheffield United, that they didn't have the best of starts either, but that once they again found rhythm, players adapted to the division style of play as well. They saw a lot of success. So this sort of goes for any club that are expecting to do well, that haven't fully found their stride yet. It's very, very early days, and it's best coming now than when you need to pick up points at the end of the season. You sort of hit that kind of patchy form. Best that it's happening now.
Let's sort of wrap things up and look to conclude then. I kind of feel like we've touched on it already, but we all kind of agree that it's been underwhelming from Middlesbrough so far. We maybe expected more at this stage of the season. And I think we're probably all in agreement that things will eventually change. I don't think anybody's going to be predicting that Middlesbrough sat in the bottom 3 come May. But let's just stage this slightly differently then, Ben. When do you think we're going to start to see things turning around from Middlesbrough, sort of, in the coming weeks or maybe a bit further down the line?
Well, I think the next game they've got against Swansea is a good kind of game they've fixtured to kind of build confidence. I think Swansea haven't been too comfortable at the back this season. They were 2-0 up against Millwall last week and drew 2-2 with 2 on goals. So I think they're a bit shaky. And with the attacking talents that Middlesbrough have got right now, and none the least, they're trying to add to them as well. I think they should be more than good enough on paper to put Swansea away. And they've got 2 tricky games after that in Watford and Sunderland. So I think if they do beat Swansea in the next game, I think that could potentially breed confidence and turn things around. And they've got 3 points, haven't they, Borough? And I think it's a very close so far. There's, the top of the table is only around 10 points, and 2 wins in a row, they could be right back in the top half. So I really don't think there's any, need to majorly panic if you're a Middlesbrough fan. And I think in the coming weeks, it should really be turned. I think the most important addition is going to be Matt Clark, because I think they've been lacking that balance at the back. I know they've got good players, Fry, McNair, Lenihan are all really good Championship defenders, but I think Wilder likes having a left-footed player on that left side of the back three, and I think Clark's really going to help there. He's been good for Derby and West Brom, so I think when he slots into that team, I think that's when things will start to change. They'll be a bit more comfortable at the back, and should they start taking the chances, I think there'll be a force to be reckoned with.
And how about you, Billy? I mean, this season's an interesting one with the fact that we've got no international break until the end of September. The transfer window's closing at the start of September. Have you got sort of like a date in mind that could be circled that Middlesbrough can really start kicking on? Will it take till the end of the transfer window, or will it take even till the first international break when Wilder can get to work with his players without a fixture?
Yeah, I do fancy a positive result against Swansea. I think this could be somewhat of a turning point. I don't think things will fully click into gear. I don't think Middlesbrough will be firing as we know they can until perhaps the international break, because as we said before, these 3 or 4 new additions still need to arrive. They still need to get embedded into the ideas that Wilder has and the playing style as well. So yeah, it doesn't all happen overnight. I think this next game against Swansea is a good opportunity to get the first 3 points on the board. Of course, as we mentioned there, then 2 tricky games, but I believe that by the international break, they'll use that time really, really effectively. Again, that's a very good opportunity for Wilder to just sit down and with these new additions, and just go through what he requires out of each position and really start to find that consistency factor within his own squad before applying that to the rest of the season. So yeah, I'm optimistic about what Middlesbrough are going to do this season. I still, in my head, see them as automatic challenges. I don't think 5 games can really paint a picture whatsoever. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see when it does finally click. And as the 3 of us have mentioned here, we believe it's going to come soon.
That concludes our look at Middlesbrough then. I think it's all safe to say that we're all particularly positive about where this season is going to end up going. for Chris Wilder. Thanks to Ben and Billy for joining me. Thanks to everybody that's got themselves in the comments, the Middlesbrough fans in particular. It's been great to hear your thoughts. Coming up later in the week on Football League World TV, we'll be looking at the transfer window once more with the EFL Transfer Zone show tomorrow. The window's really ramping up now, heading into the final week, so plenty to discuss there. And we're actually going to be looking at Middlesbrough's opponents at the weekend, Swansea City, and looking at Russell Martin, because as you've both touched on there, it's not been a great start for the Swans. And then finally, back end of the week, we'll be looking ahead to the weekend's action. So plenty coming up on the channel and loads on the website as well with the transfer window, coming towards the end in the next week or so. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.